All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine, and for today's video masterclass, we're going to be talking about the basics and fundamentals of starting your first Premiere Pro project. As many times as I live stream and as many customers as I meet who maybe aren't really video focused, but they find that they're having to do more and more video. Just like opening Photoshop for the first time and looking at that blank canvas, or just like opening Illustrator or XD for the first time, Premiere Pro can be a little scary just starting that new project. There's a bunch of dialogues you have to go through. There's a bunch of settings that you kind of don't really need to know everything about, but it kind of forces you to think about them. And as such, I thought this would be a great opportunity to take you through all the basic steps of setting up that project and then showing you some practices along the way that can make your experience better, particularly when importing footage, making selections, making in and out points. We've got a couple of new views and lots of new ways to actually see your content front and center. And it's easier than ever, actually, to see everything that you've captured and be able to assemble timelines and just start telling that story faster. So thank you so much for joining on Adobe Live on Behance today, and those of you coming to us on YouTube. Of course, now the difference with this live stream is that this is live interactive chat, unlike my daily streams. So I'm looking at the chat as we're going, so I'll be able to answer questions. And of course, we've got a lot of our standard Adobe Live mods in there. So thank you so much for joining. All right, with that, let's go ahead and we're going to switch over to my screen and get started with the first thing, of course, that you will see in Premiere, which is this. All right. Right. So that's the first screen you're going to see. Now, of course, you can see some of my pre-existing projects there. What we want to do now is begin that new project. So, of course, we can come up to the New Project button right up here and click on New Project. All right. Now, as mentioned, one of the things that I hear a lot from customers is, you know, this dialogue, it's just kind of scary. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to give it a name. All right. So we're going to call this, we're going to be working with some footage. I used this in a stream yesterday that I shot in Alaska. So we're just going to call this Alaska, and we'll call it Alaska Behance. All right. Tell it where you want that to go. So let's go, and I've got a folder desktop mask with text. Sure, I'm going to stick it in there. Now, under General, which is the tab that's selected by default, the first thing you'll see here is video rendering and playback. All right, now I'm going to go through all these things. Well, not every single one of them, but I'm going to go through the ones that are relevant that you should be aware of, okay? Long story short, this enables or allows you to enable some type of GPU acceleration. That means that you're leveraging the RAM on your graphics card to handle a lot of the processing, specifically things like effects processing. If you're going to add, you know, color correction or blurs or really any type of animation, movement, or effects, you generally want some kind of GPU acceleration. Now, whether you're on the Mac or the PC, we have a recommended GPU acceleration method, which will already be pre-selected. And you can see here I'm on the Mac, and that method is Apple Metal. Now we also have the older, you can see it shows up as deprecated, OpenCL. And then there's something here called software only. Now this will not use GPU. There's no reason you can't use software only, but the problem is that's using all CPU. So ultimately, when you start adding effects and things, its performance may be a little bit slower. So again, the ability to take advantage of GPU acceleration, that's what you want to do. That's going to be pre-selected for you. You don't necessarily need to change it. For those of you working with NVIDIA CUDA cards, you may also see the option there for NVIDIA CUDA. You can try that as well. But just to point out that this is really the one setting in this area here that you'll probably want to just be aware of. Now, as far as display format, time code, feet, frames, you're not going to ever really need to change this. You know, this feet and frames, again, this is related to those kind of working in film who are familiar with that. And if you just want to see frames, that's fine. The standard time code is pretty much what everybody's used to. You're never going to change that. Audio display format, kind of the same thing. Also, using audio samples is kind of ridiculous. There's really no point. 48,000 samples per second. It's not going to tell you anything about the length or the duration unless you want to do tons of math in your head. So you're just going to leave it at milliseconds. And then capture here, this is literally related to FireWire capture back when we used to control or input via FireWire-based DV and HDV cameras. So if you're doing that, and if you actually are capturing DV somehow, You could change that to DV. The default here is HDV. Again, you're likely never going to have to bother with that. All right, now the other two tabs here, scratch disks and ingest settings. Scratch disks, anybody who works in Photoshop, you'll be familiar with this already. There's a whole bunch of elements that get created when you build a Premiere Pro project. And you can see here, captured video, captured audio, video previews, project autosave, CC library downloads, and motion graphics template media. The default location for these is the same as the project, and it'll typically place it, again, sort of adjacent to where all of the other media is going. If you have specific needs to place those elements somewhere else, you can customize it, okay? Most people will never need to change that. Certainly, if this is your first project, you're just trying to get started, you don't need to change any of these things. All right, let's go over to our chat here just for a second and see if anybody's okay. All right, Michelle Fernandez from Mexico, hello. All right, hello from Italy, Viola Villa, Jamil, hello, Rosemary from Miami. Nice, Catherine Lacoste from Spain, very nice to see you, Ariana. All right, cool, very cool. Jamil's asking, isn't that better on Windows-based PC than Mac? You know, yes, no, maybe. I mean, it always depends on, you know, the spec of the machine, right? To be honest, having used both, really, it's similar, you know. You can have a more powerful PC, and sure, it may run better. You can have a more powerful Mac, it may run better. It also depends what else is going on there. It depends on drives. Do you have SSD? Do you have spinning drives? Do you have RAIDs? What have you got going on there? How much RAM do you have? How fast is the RAM? So many things to consider. So, you know, as far as what OS is faster, you know, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, to be honest. It's just a matter of trying them out. And if you're a Mac person, use a Mac. If you're a Windows person, use Windows. You can get great performance out of both if you know how to configure things. All right. Hey, what's up, Eric? Awesome. Yes, likes the basics. And Nima from Iran. Nice to see you. Okay. Now, the last tab here before we get started is ingest settings. Now, I'm just pointing this out. We're not going to cover this whole process today. What this does is this allows you to create what are known as proxy files. Now, again, if you are familiar with Lightroom CC, when you import your images from your Sony camera, Nikon camera, Canon camera, what have you, if you're shooting RAW, right, you're going to be shooting NEF files or I forget what the Canon format is, and I don't remember what the Sony format is, but right, you're shooting some RAW format. And then by default, Lightroom will convert those. It is converting, i.e. transcoding them to that standard DNG file format. Well, that is essentially what ingest proxy creation does. It makes copies of those files, but more importantly, when you're actually creating proxies, the idea behind it is you're making smaller, lightweight files so that it's less stress on your system. So if let's just assume you were shooting 4K and maybe even 8K, all right? Most machines can't really handle smooth playback of certainly 8K. So you might make proxies to make smaller, lightweight versions of that media so it'll just play better. It doesn't do anything to the originals, they still get imported. You never actually see the proxy files themselves. Again, they're saved next to the adjacent media. We're not going to go into that today because that's beyond beginner. Now, if you simply wanted to transcode, much like Lightroom, to kind of a standard format, or what is sometimes known in the video space as a mezzanine codec or intermediate codec, you can do that too. And there are many choices. You'll see here if you look at some of the presets. Again, these are like high-end file formats. ProRes 422, now supported on Mac and Windows. Avid's DNX HD, DNX HR, GoPro Cineform is another. Again, this is like the high-end stuff most of you are never going to have to encounter. You can do all that. You can also create just the proxy files, as I mentioned, or you can copy the media and create proxies, all right? Lots of options. Now, the one reason you might want to copy, just to kind of point that out there, is if you're pulling everything off of a media card. The awesome thing about Premiere is that you don't actually have to move anything. You could take an SD, XD card, CF card, plug it into your machine, and edit right off of it. You never have to move the media. And those cards are fast. But if you wanted to put it on another drive, this can do that process as you're kind of working with footage and importing it. That's it, okay? So we're going to uncheck ingest. This is not something you will have to do. You can revisit. I will do another stream here where we cover creating proxies, all right? So we've got our GPU acceleration done. That's really the only thing that we just modified in here or just looked at anyway. Let's go ahead and click OK. We gave it a name. We're telling it where it goes. And it opens up Premiere. All right. So give it a second here. And now, of course, my interface might look a little bit different than yours. This is obviously customized for the stream here. But what you're going to see, of course, are a couple of familiar panels. So up at the top here, I've got my project panel, and this is where all of your footage will live. You'll also see things like a source monitor, an effects controls panel, a track mixer. Again, it kind of just depends on what workspace you're in. Your workspaces, incidentally, just like in Photoshop, just like in Illustrator, just like in every Adobe app, contained under the window menu, Workspace. All right, now I'm in a modified color workspace here. You can see Behance, Masterclass. Yours will likely be different. I don't even remember what the default workspace is. All they're really doing, of course, is just revealing certain panels to you. If you're getting started, I would probably recommend the editing workspace or the assembly workspace as a good place to get started. It's going to show you most of the panels that you need, including the tools panel, the timeline panel, the project panel, the effects controls panel, and the program panel, all right, or the program monitor. You'll hear me call these things out again because all of these can be accessed from this menu here, all right? So again, you might want to go to something like the editing workspace here. If I take a look at this one here, again, these are all probably modified because I play with them all the time. Incidentally, if you double click on a workspace, you'll see that it can be reset to the last saved version of that workspace. Now, again, I've modified all of mine for the stream, so I'm not going to change them. But if we wanted to go back to however it was last saved or the default save, you can do that. And you have that checkbox to always ask, okay? All right, but I'm going to go back to my color BMC one here. Okay, so importing footage, all right? That's where we got to start, right? Hold on, we're just looking here. All right. So complicated. Okay, hey, we haven't even done anything yet, right? It's actually not. Again, that's what I'm saying, is you just have to be aware of all the little things. It doesn't have to take this long. I'm just explaining it all so that you know what's involved, okay? Now, naturally, you have a lot of different ways to import footage. If you simply double-click inside of the project panel, that will open up whatever your last folder accessed was, and then you can access all of your additional folders in your operating system here. So if I wanted to bring in, let's say, something like this piece of footage right here, I can select it, click import, and it will immediately appear inside of my project panel like that. All right, now we're going to get to viewing the media in just a second. Now, typically, it actually shows up this way, which is in what is known as list view. And here, I'm just going to zoom down so you can see. Inside the project panel, there are 3 discrete types of views: list view, icon view, and freeform view. And we're going to cover all these. So this is the list view. Now, the list view is nice if you just want to see all of the attributes, everything that's kind of inside or what that file is made up of. It's going to tell you all of that. So if I hit the tilde key, now this is on the US keyboard. It's different on all keyboards, so I can't tell you what it is on the Italian keyboard or the German keyboard or the Swedish keyboard because it's different on all of them. It's the tilde sign, all right? Those of you who speak Spanish will know it. If I hit the tilde key, it goes full screen on this panel. So just to kind of show you what the list view does, it shows you the frame rate, okay? Media start and end, the duration of the media. We haven't done any in and out points yet, so obviously it's the whole thing. This is effectively all of your metadata, right? It shows you that this is 4K footage shot at 60 frames per second. So this was done on the iPhone here. How the audio was captured, it's 44.1 mono. All right, no, there's no other additional metadata in here. Status, it's online, and then there's some other fields. Now, again, we're not going to get into a whole metadata thing because that's a little bit more advanced, but that's what the list view does. Kind of hard, though, to see what's in that footage, right? Now, traditionally, you would double-click on this clip, and it would open up in the source monitor. And traditionally, the source monitor is where you preview footage, like this. So you just hit play, so you'll see you have your transport controls down at the bottom of the source monitor. All right. And you can take the playhead, also known as the current time indicator, this little blue button right here, and you can scrub through it all, okay? And that's fine, and this is also where you could set in and out points. We're not going to do it here, though. I'm going to show you a different way. By the way, to set in and out points, which is basically setting the selection that you want to begin using in your timeline, you use the key I and O. I for in, O for out. But I'm going to show you a better way. This is kind of the more traditional way. All right. Also, double-clicking inside the project panel is a classic way of importing footage. But we also have a panel called the media browser. And actually, I want to say, is that docked up here? It is. So I'm going to move this one over to the program panel here. Now, again, if you're using any of the modern CC apps, they're all dockable panels. You know how this works. I'm not going to cover that. All right, so let's look at this footage inside the media browser. Okay, so I've got my content contained here in this folder called More Assets 2017. All right, and here is all of my footage. Okay, so everything's laid out here. You can see it all. All right, very nice. Okay, and now this gives you the opportunity to actually see everything that you're looking at before you import it. Makes sense. Now inside the media browser, you of course also have a list view, zooming in so you can see it at the bottom here, there's the icon for that, as well as the thumbnail view, all right? You also have a zoom bar here. So this allows you to zoom in on everything, okay? So you can make the icons bigger, you can make the video icons bigger so you can see exactly what's happening inside of the footage. That's particularly useful if you're going to be making selections. It's just a lot easier to see exactly what's inside of all the footage, okay? So, and when you hover over your clips with your mouse, I'm not clicking anything, just showing you here. This is what's called hover scrubbing, all right? So you can click on the clip itself. When you do that, you'll actually see that there's a little playhead. And that will scrub through playing the audio as well. With the clip selected, you can also use shuttle keys, known as JKL on your keyboard. J to go backwards, K to pause or stop, L to go forwards. And if you hit it twice, it goes double speed. Same with reverse. And I think if you hit it 3 times, it goes triple speed, okay? So this just allows you a little bit more flexibility in bringing in that content and seeing it all at a glance, okay? So let's go ahead and make multiple selections here. So I'm going to come up to this piece of footage, and I'm going to hold down on the Mac my Command key. So I'm selecting multiple bits of footage. And I'm just selecting some of these clips here, all right? This one, all of these I think are some slow-mo of water. It's always funny when I look back at content, I'm like, oh yeah, I tried to shoot all of that slow-mo, you know. Okay, so once you've made your selections, again, holding down the Command key or the Control key on Windows, I'm simply going to click and drag all of this content into the project panel. And now it all shows up in the list view in the project panel. Great, okay. But we're still looking at that list view. Kind of makes it hard to make our selects and again, begin assembling our timeline. So this is where now we're going to change the view to something called Freeform. Whoops, sorry, hit my microphone there. Freeform is this button that you see down here. Now this was actually introduced last year, 2019. In fact, I showed this feature at Adobe Max in November. And when you click on Freeform View, Freeform is just that. Now I'm going to hit my tilde key to go full screen. Of course, in lieu of the tilde key, I could also just expand the panel if I wanted to. All right. What this allows me to do is, first and foremost, see all of my video. Now, again, I can resize it as well. You can't see the resizer because my camera's in the way. Hold on. So here, let me just switch over so you can see. All right. So all your controls are at the bottom here. So you can see the little resizer right there. All right. Adjust the size of icons and thumbnails. Let's go back to my video here. All right. So you can resize everything first and foremost, but then you can also pick up your media and move it around. So you can group things together. So this little series of shots here, this is all the same vantage point, all the same place. If I hold down the Option key, it even allows me to snap these clips together. All right, you can see that they're just magnetic. All right. Here's another series of shots. These two are from the same vantage, well, actually opposite vantage points, but the same kind of look and feel, right? So I like those two together. This one is totally separate. By the way, if you right-click on a clip, go to your menu down here. Now, again, are we going to be able to see all this? I think so. You'll see that you also have clip size. So I can resize those clips. All of this just in an effort to allow you to see the content a little bit better. So right now it's at medium size. Let's go to a large size so we can resize it. If I want to take these 3 clips here, select them all, right clip, clip size, let's make those extra large, and it resizes all of them. Now, again, because I stacked them side by side, they're kind of in a weird, they're not layered like they were, so I'm just going to move these down like this. Again, you can stack them however you like, which is really, really nice, okay? And you can begin to just organize things in the way that maybe you want to tell the story, maybe by different types or times of day. Whatever the theme is, however you want to assemble and organize, Freeform lets you do that. Now, what it also lets you do is, just like with the media browser, hover scrub and set your in and out points. So this is essential. This is what allows you to find the best moment in your video, or that intro, right? You always do a little, all right, take one, here we go. And then you begin, so you can set the in right where you begin. So again, if I click on this clip here, I have my playhead. I can scrub through. I can hit my JKL keys to shuttle if I want to. All right, like that. And I can set my ins and outs. So I'm going to say I for in, and you see that it eliminates the blue from the beginning of this clip. That means we're not using those first couple of frames. Let's play through it. All right, something like that. O for out. So now this highlighted blue section, this is the piece that we're going to be using. All right, this is the piece of the clip that will show up when we build a timeline, which we're going to do right now. So again, the process at this point is, let's start reviewing all of our footage and find the good stuff that we want to import. All right, so we'll do the same thing on this one. Now I'm zooming in just so it's a little bit easier. We could also just resize these on screen. So I'll click inside my clip. All right. These were all shot in Alaska, so just a variety of different sort of landscapey shots here. I'm not saying this is a fantastic film, just kind of showcasing some of the beautiful sights of our beautiful planet. All right, same thing here. So maybe I'll set an in on this, out on that. Let's move this one over. I think that's my favorite shot from that series. Let's go to another clip here. I and O, looking down at the chat. Oh, well, thank you, Jamil. Glad you're learning something. That's great. Okay. And maybe we'll come over to this clip here. Some running water. Set my in and out points. All right. And then we'll come over to this one. And this is kind of a cool shot. There were all these crazy birds. This is in Seward, Alaska. And so here, maybe I'll just set my out point right about there. Okay. So now I have this series of shots. And let's say I want to build a timeline. In fact, I'll stick this one at the end here. From this series of shots. Oh, and by the way, you may have noticed, as I dragged this off screen, everything else is moving. Because this is a continuous, think of this as like a video artboard. All right, if I zoom back out again, you see that you get the little divider so you can move around on screen. You can move this stuff anywhere. Now I'm using a single monitor here, and based on the stream here, I'm working in 1080, 1920 by 1080. If you've got a huge monitor, you can put this stuff all over the place. You can drag things off screen. You can make as much available real estate as you need to be able to organize all of your clips real easily. By the way, if you right-click in the dead space here, or control-click, you can also align to a grid or reset your media to any one of those metadata parameters. So if you wanted to say organize by clip name, or again by proxy, or by video duration in ascending or descending order, you can do that in a grid-like fashion. You also have the ability, and this is really useful, to save layouts. So I might say save as new layout. Call this Alaska, take one. Because this way, if I move stuff all over the place, let's just say I had even more clips in here, and I think I'm going to tell a different story later on, I'm like, you know what? I don't love this. I want to go back to the way it was. Right click, restore layout, Alaska take 1, and everything goes back to the way it just was. All right. So you can save the look, save the layout of that artboard, of your freeform canvas at any time. And that gets saved with the project. So even if you come back 3 days later, you know, you've moved stuff around after saving it, and you're like, I want to go back to the way it was, you can recall it. And you can save, of course, multiple versions. That's typically what I'll do anyway. All right. Dejan, it would be cool if we could connect thumbnails with arrow lines. Yes, that is actually a great suggestion, and I would recommend that. Now, that might already be a feature request, kind of like a node style. Yeah, it does. That does kind of work. I like that idea. That's a great opportunity to go to user voice and make that suggestion. All right, so now we've got a series of in and out points, and we want to build our timeline. Okay, there's a couple different ways that you can do this. If you simply right-click on a single clip, okay, the best way to do it is new sequence from clip, right? Right-click, control-click, new sequence from clip. And what that will do is it will automatically create a sequence for you in the correct frame size with the correct pixel aspect ratio. Everything is done for you at the right frame rate. And there it is. And you can play back your content just like that, okay? Now that's for a single clip. Now, again, you also have the ability from the project panel or the File New menu to go down here and choose the New Item button. And in the New Item button, you have a whole series of things. And again, traditionally, you might have gone to the Sequence section here. And the Sequence section allows you to use preset sequence attributes to work in. So let's say that you were doing something in, like you were working in VR. You can see we've got all these monoscopic and stereoscopic VR presets, 8K, 6K, 4K, 2K. That you can begin working with. Similarly, if you're working with red content, all different flavors of red at different frame sizes. I mentioned DV, again, DSLR. There's all these presets in here. The truth is, with right-clicking or control-clicking new sequence from clip, you don't have to go there anymore, all right? Now, someone might say, well, what's the benefits of doing that? Well, inside the sequence settings, this is where you can change, your audio track configuration. You can adjust specific settings and editing modes for your sequence. A lot of these things you can't change after the fact if you just do new sequence from clip. So again, if you want to customize, again, VR video, not to be excluded from there too, you have more flexibility in the sequence menu. But for most things, you're never going to have to do that. And even these days, if I shoot on the iPhone, I shoot on my DSLR or mirrorless, I do new sequence from clip, it knows what I want, and it's done. And that's that. I seldom ever have to go in there and change anything, unless there's audio specific needs, or I'm using, like, again, a camera that has 8 channels of audio, and I want to make sure that it's routed in a certain way. I might make changes to those settings. All right. Rosemary, very nice work. Oh, thank you. Jamil, nice. That's half the work for me, right? I mean, again, it can get real confusing real fast, all right? Okay, so that was a single clip. Now, one of the nice things about Freeform is if I select my first clip in my stack of clips here, hold down my Shift key and select the last one, now I'm going to say new sequence from clip, and it's going to do the same thing, except now it's going to assemble everything in the order that I had it selected there and allow me to, have all of that footage based on the in and out points that we chose inside my timeline here. Now, as you can see, and I didn't even realize this, I was wondering, we have an issue because this stuff was shot, I think this was shot at 60 and 120. This first clip is obviously 4K, and these others here, these are all 1080p. So there's a couple things that we can do for this. Well, ultimately, I'd probably want to scale the bigger one down. That would be a personal recommendation. However, you can also scale them up, all right? Now, you might ask, why scale down versus up? Well, for obvious reasons, just like with imagery. If you've got a, let's just say a 7K by 5K image, right? And then you have a 4K by 3K image that you're compositing together. Do you want to blow up the smaller one or shrink the bigger one? You can blow up the smaller one, and Photoshop, of course, has new enlargement algorithms that, really are far, far advanced and way better than ever before. And you can do, and After Effects too. I mean, you can also blow up video. We have expand video, rescale video. But just like with images, right? If you're going to scale something smaller to bigger, it might get a little softer. You might lose some detail. Now, again, we have other processes that can make that better, specifically in After Effects with something called detail preserving upscale. Not going to cover that here today. A quick way to do it, because we're in a 4K timeline, if I still wanted to use this footage in 4K, I can right-click or control-click on the clip, and I can choose Scale to Frame Size, and it will now fill the frame, all right? Similarly with this clip, Scale to Frame Size, it does the same thing, all right? And come over to my last clip here, and we're going to do Scale to Frame Size. And same thing. Now, I know there's probably a bunch of people in here going, don't do that. Now it's going to be soft and pixelated, whatever. I'm just showing you. And by the way, sometimes it really doesn't matter. And if you've got really crisp, beautiful looking 1080, scaling up to 4K isn't necessarily, it's not like the old days. If you scaled up DV to HD, there just wasn't enough data there in the first place. It's going to look pretty soft and not so awesome. Well-shot 1080, a high bitrate 1080 going to 4K, even with the native scale, can look pretty good. Again, we have other methods to do that. I invite you to check out my YouTube channel, Jason Levine Video, where I just did a live stream on detail preserving upscale, how to scale video with the best results. And again, so that you don't lose sharpness, that you don't lose color density and contrast, okay? All right, so now we've got everything in the timeline here. And you can see we're cutting between all these various clips. All right, so now that that's in there, let's talk about some of the things that you're going to face. Because again, depending upon the system that you're on, and we're doing some scaling here, your playback may not be super smooth. So there's a couple things that you want to be aware of when you begin playing and scrubbing through your content, all right? The first and foremost is something that you'll see in the program monitor here, which is your Playback Resolution. And this button, this should be your go-to at all times to ensure the smoothest playback and scrubbing possible. With this, if you click on the down arrow here, what this does is it allows you to fractionally view your content either in half resolution, quarter resolution, eighth resolution, or 16th resolution if you're using something like 8K, to give you better playback performance. This is a non-destructive process. It's not throwing pixels away. It's not destroying your original media in any way. It's just ensuring that you're going to get the best playback based on the system you're on, okay? Now, typically, I'll run most things at half res or even quarter res, all right? Now, just to show you, if you click on this settings menu, which is this wrench icon that you see here, this actually reveals two different settings. So you have a playback resolution, which let's keep it at 1/4 resolution for the moment. And then you have a pause resolution, meaning when you stop, all right? Now, I always keep this at full. Why? Well, again, because when I'm cutting a story together, I don't care as I'm editing things if it's necessarily, in the highest fidelity possible. And again, we're looking at this on a small program monitor. If I use my tilde and go full screen on that, you can see it might look, it's also a little shaky because it's handheld, but it looks a little soft, right? It looks a little pixelated. But when I stop it, did you notice how things got sharper? You can really see if you look at the boat. Let's just wind back a bit. Again, it's quite pixelated there, all right? But I stop, zzz, and everything sharpens up, all right? Let's go back to this first clip here. Good example. Again, full screen, playing it back. It's a little soft. It's a little pixelated. Stop. Oh, whoops, I missed it. Stop. I feel like, what's that game with the whammies? No whammies. Stop. Look at the detail in the rocks, right? But when I'm playing it back, it's quite soft. It's hard to see that detail. Stop, and it all sharpens up, all right? I'm viewing this at 1/4 resolution. So this really allows me to very briskly move through my content, scrub through my content, see everything that's in here, all right? This clip as well, stop, all right, gets a little bit sharper. Now again, this is a scaled clip, so it's a little softer anyway, but you can see when we're in quarter res, a little bit softer, stop, it sharpens up, all right? This is a setting that it's not a set and forget, because if you're working in 1080 and your machine can handle 1080, play it at full res, all right? No reason not to. But again, if you find that things are slowing down or it's not as performant as you'd like, drop it to half res or even quarter. Now, the benefits of having the pause at full quality, of course, is that you're literally seeing every pixel that was captured. So when you're doing things like color correction, then it's essential, right? Because you want to be sure that whether you're adding saturation or highlights or whatever, that you're really seeing how it's affecting that native footage. All right. So I always keep the pause at full, and I generally will keep my playback usually at half. One of the nice things too about working with 4K, and I shoot everything these days on the iPhone, frankly. We're looking at this little small window. It looks good. Even at half res, I don't feel like I'm losing detail in my shot. I really don't. Now, the other thing, of course, is you also have a fit setting. So what's nice about this is if we go to this shot here, okay, if I go to fit and I say 100%, this is actually the full size of the clip now in the program monitor. Again, it's 4K, so it's rather large. To see it all, though, in this view, I need to fit it like that, all right? So again, maybe you have your program monitor docked off to another monitor which is running full screen at all time. Then, and if it's a 4K monitor, then you can choose fit, or you can choose 100% scale or 50% scale, or in this case, 10% scale. And it's just scaling down that viewable window so that you can see it in the real estate that you've provided. All right, it's that simple. No real magic there, but something to be aware of. Generally, again, 100%, you're like, where's my shot? And why do I have these scroll bars over here? Yeah, okay. Fit. Oh, there we go. Now I see everything. Okay. Cool. All right, let's check the chat. Jamil, warp stabilizer on the way. Yes. And I'll tell you what, I will cover that. Actually, I'll divert to that right now because you brought it up. All right. This one's pretty darn shaky. And there's even, I can see looks like I changed the aperture there. Or the exposure. Something happened. Again, this was iPhone. I probably shot this in Rush. Okay. So while I'm here, actually, let's talk a little bit about tools, okay? So and then we'll get to warp stabilizer. Once you've got your content in the timeline, of course, the durations are not fixed. You can move things. So with your sequence selected here, if I just hover my mouse over the edges of my clips, right? What you're seeing here is this allows you to trim, all right? And you can see that as I'm trimming right now, on the right, it's showing me, okay, I'm changing the in point of this clip, okay? Now, this trim, when it's red like that, is trimming the actual clip. What typically people want to do is what's known as a ripple, where you're trimming it, but you want it to take the beginning of that and keep it where it was, right? Snapped against that other clip. So for that, you can use a basic keyboard shortcut. Now, I'm not a huge keyboard shortcut person. I know very few of them. I don't use them, again, because for years when we had to work internationally, it was just too hard to remember them all. So I would use menu items or icons. For this, however, this is a shortcut I always use, which is, again, the Command key. So if you hover over and it's red, hold down the Command key. All right, let me zoom back out so you can see what I'm doing. All right, so this is now a ripple trim. And now, as I adjust my in point, when I let go, you'll see that it snaps the video back to that point where I want it against the other video there, all right? So again, if you've got your red trims, like at the end of this is fine. Maybe I'm expanding this. That's okay, there's nothing after that. But what if I wanted to shorten this clip? Well, if I do it in red, I'm leaving a gap, right? Command Z to undo. Hover my mouse over, Command turns yellow, drag the end point over. Now you can see on the left, we're seeing the time code where the end point is, the last frame, let go, and now it snaps everything together like that, okay? And it'll segue from our birds to that clip right there, okay? Now, if we look at the tools here, we're not going to cover every single one of these for editing. You've also got your ripple edit tool specifically again. So again, this requires that this doesn't require that you hold down a keyboard shortcut. You've got your razor tool, right? And that is exactly what you think. What if I want to cut it somewhere? I want to cut this right here and move this somewhere else. Take your razor tool and click and cut. And now you'll see you've got two clips there. Now to move it, we're going to hit V. That's your standard Adobe Move tool, right? And we're just going to move these clips over like that. Okay? So again, now I don't so much use the ripple edit tool, shortcut key B. I always forget it's B. So you've got V for your selection or move tool, B for your ripple edit, the yellow tool, C for your razor tool. This one is also pretty useful, which is the slip tool, shortcut key Y. What is the slip tool? Well, this allows you to adjust the timing. Let's say that I don't want to change the edits or where this clip is in relation to the ones before and after, but I want to change what you're seeing on screen. All right, if I go to my slip tool, what this actually does is it's letting you adjust the content inside the clip that you're seeing, all right? So you're slipping it forward or backward in time without changing the edit position. Make sense? All right. So those are really kind of fundamentally the four most common things that you're going to use. Now, there's other side-by-side editing things. We're not going to get into that right now because I'm trying to keep this as basic as possible. Again, mostly you're going to use ripple edit, trim, maybe slip, and cut. Okay? If you know those four, you're going to be able to tell a story pretty effectively. All right? Now, something else which is really important. If you're capturing video and audio together, maybe you don't want the audio from that video, right? Now, of course, you can see here I've muted it in my timeline. By the way, when you drag your clips in or bring them in from Freeform, as you saw, it's going to bring the audio together with it. Incidentally, if I wanted to take another clip that wasn't included, I can also just drag that down into the timeline here. Now, you'll see if I move up, it'll place the audio and video on different tracks. Your default is 3 video and 3 audio tracks. Why do that? Well, sometimes you want to process audio differently. You want to keep things separated. I'm just holding this down, and this is allowing me to choose where it goes. So let's place this maybe on track 2 and audio track 2. All right. Incidentally, too, you'll notice that as I'm moving these over, the edits are snapping together. That snapping is enabled right here inside of your timeline, snap in timeline. If I uncheck that, you can see it's a magnet icon. I'm not getting any indicators of these being, right at the edge of each other. Okay, so this can get a little confusing, right, if things aren't snapped together. Turn back on snapping. Now I get these little lines. You can see them very clearly. All right, and I know that when this clip ends, it's going to segue into the next clip. Just go ahead and play that. Just like that, okay? Real simple. All right, let's take a look at some of our cues here. Okay, Gregory Bracco, how do I dock off Program Monitor to an external monitor? Great question. Okay, so with all of your panels from Media Browser, Program, everything in here, you have this little menu icon up here. So if you click on that, you'll see that you have the ability to undock that panel. Or if you have a group of them, you can also close. You have other options, all right? So if I undock the Program Monitor, this is now freeform and floating, right? It's not connected to anything. I don't have a secondary monitor, but I could simply drag this off to another one and have it fill the space that way. If I grab it from the middle, now you can see I have the ability here to place it and dock it alongside other panels. So if I want to dock this back in the center, in this series of panels right here, I'll use that purple center indicator. I can also change the position of these just by click, drag, and hold, right? So here, I'll zoom in up here just to show you. So again, if I wanted to move the project panel after source, I'm just clicking and holding and moving the position, okay? Really simply, really easily. Greg, can I dedicate Program to an external monitor but also have Program on my edit workspace? So 2 Program monitors is what you're saying? So you have, in that case, you might want to use what's known as, and I want to get into this here and derail things, but we also have the Mercury Transmit, which allows you via HDMI, SDI to send a separate output to an external monitoring device so that you could keep the program in your main edit and have something else monitoring the final edit there. So there's other ways to do that. Yes, you don't have to do that specifically this way. Okay. Eric Sue, cool. Diego, okay. All right, Rami Marcil. If I have clips in different sizes and I want to resize my timeline to HD while selecting them all, what should I do? Make the HD one the first selection. Okay, great question, Rami. So, yes, when you make a timeline, if you have mixed media, and this is one of the great things about Premiere is that it lets you do timelines in mixed media. If, say, you had HD, 4K, 8K clips, but you want the timeline to be HD, the first clip that you select or the first clip that you import will be, that will set the attributes of the timeline. Remember, new sequence from clip, it's going to look at that and go, oh, this is 1080. It's going to make that timeline 1080. Now, let me show you something here real quickly. I'm going to, let me take these out of here. Bear with me for a second. Drop this in. Okay. So I cleared this other timeline, which is already 4K, and I took this clip from Freeform and I dragged it into this blank timeline. When I did that, Premiere said, hey, this clip doesn't match the sequence's settings, right? So this is if like I use the sequence menu and I chose a 1080 24 frame preset, but now I'm dragging 720p into that timeline. Premiere says, do you want to change the sequence settings to 720p or keep the existing settings? So you're placing different footage in a timeline that it already has attributes. So Rami, for your question, if you built a sequence timeline without a clip at 1080 and you grabbed a 4K clip, you would say keep existing settings. So it's going to keep it 1080, and then you can scale down that 4K to fit the frame like I showed you, or whatever you want to do. You have options there. The cool thing is that now we alert you. Or I can say, no, change the sequence settings. I want them to be whatever this is, 1080 or 720. And when you do that, now it's not scaling anything, right? Now it's built a timeline in the attributes of this clip, which in this case is smaller than the others. Excuse me. We didn't always do this, so it's actually really nice to have this addition in here, all right? Diego, how do you work with two clips with different aspect ratios? Yes. So again, Premiere will allow you to import those clips in any case. Now, if they are in different aspect ratios, you may have to do some scaling and resizing to make them conform to fill the space. Now, if you're working with a lot of media that's in, let's say, a square aspect versus a 1.33 versus a 2:1, that's an area where you may want to transcode everything to a standard frame size or aspect ratio, because that can get a little confusing when assembling things, just in keeping everything to fill the frame. Yeah. Now, we don't encounter so much of this today, but like if I had some ultra wide screen, some of your Red cameras shoot like a 2:1 aspect, so it's super wide and narrow. Well, yeah, I'm going to have black bars at the top and bottom of my program manager for that media, right? So how do I get it to fill? Well, I'll have to scale it up, right? Or scale everything else down, but then I might have pillar boxing on the sides. So, you have to kind of determine how you want that to look, but we let you import all of those together. All right. Now, one other thing I want to show you here, which is actually super cool. Now, I showed you bringing stuff in from the project panel right down into the timeline. Well, you can also bring things from the project panel into the program monitor. So if I take this clip here, our bird clip, and I simply drag it into the program monitor, and this is one of these undiscovered things a lot of people don't know, you'll see that you get these overlays that say, okay, do you want to insert that before the current clip? Do you want to replace it? Do you want to overwrite? Do you want to overlay on a second track? Or do you want to insert after? So this is super, super cool and useful, especially if you're doing one clip at a time. I can say, okay, yeah, I want to put the birds before the boat. Insert before. Watch what happens. Just that. It inserted the birds before the boat clip. Undo it. All right, take the same one here. Let's insert it after. Now it did the same thing. By the way, the backslash key, backslash on the US keyboard, is allowing me to constantly see everything that's in my timeline. So again, we've got our water here on the boat and then the birds, okay? Take another clip. Again, maybe I want to do an overlay on this one. So it's going to cut to that and then cut back to something else. Overlay. It overlays exactly where my cursor was or my current time indicator. So now when I play this back, all right, we go from the boat to a different scene of running water. all right, another bird, and then back to that scene right there. So it overlaid that clip, all right? Let's take this one here. Oops, I didn't mean to grab multiples. This one, okay, overlay, replace, overwrite. Let's do a replace on this. And it did just that. It replaced the clip that it was over top of, okay? And you'll notice, what is this here? Well, this clip is shorter, so it didn't fill all the space from the previous clip, all right? So drag and drop with these, I think we call these drop zones, super useful, all right? A lot of people never discover that because they just drag into the timeline, but you can also drag right onto the program monitor, okay? Oh, hey, Dave, thanks so much for that. All right. On Mar, when importing video, 5994 frames per second into Premiere, 49 minutes becomes 24 minutes with voice mismatch. Okay, it should not. I don't know why it's cutting it in half, or that's not even quite half, almost. Yeah, I don't really know. That shouldn't be happening. In fact, as you can see, it's keeping everything native here. So this is something else, by the way. If we go back to our list view, get out of Freeform. So one of the metadata fields, let's see if is this even open? I don't even have that one open, is media type. I don't have that one displayed right here. But what you'll see is you've got, your footage, right? Oh, these are 240 FPS. You can see those clips right there. All right. By the way, if you hover over, I think, each of the clips, it'll give you a little tip. Yeah, so that's 1080, 240 FPS, all right? So it's going to show you the attributes of those sequences. So this is a 1080, 240 sequence. This is a, I'm guessing, 4K 60 sequence, all right? If you have footage and if you want to make sure that it's playing back in the native, so what you may have done, I'm guessing on Mars, maybe you put it in a timeline that was of a different frame size, frame rate, aspect ratio, and it conformed it to whatever that was. So you shouldn't have a mismatch in any case, but perhaps that's what happened. In any case, if you want to change the playback timing, for instance, like right now, if we go to that timeline here, this one, or is it this one? This is our slow-mo timeline. This is playing back in real time. But I shot this at 240 so I could show it slow-mo. So this is a little more advanced. I wasn't really going to show this, but might as well since I'm here. And since you asked that question on Mar, if you right-click, control-click, and go to Modify Interpret, so I can say play this 240 frame content back at 24 frames per second, so 1/10. Now what that's going to do, obviously, is now it's going to play everything super slow and super dramatic. Now it didn't change the duration of the edit, right? So we're not seeing, all that whole series that you saw before when it was like 3 seconds, because now it's playing super slow. But this is where you get that beautiful slow motion. By the way, this is where I could go to my ripple edit tool, move all this stuff over. Let's move this over too. So you just get more of that slow-mo. And, again, this is iPhone, but at 240 frames, I mean, it's just glorious, It's just so organic and awesome, and I love it. And this is only 1080, right? So you can change the playback frame rate of a clip just by interpreting the footage, okay? All right, Cecilia, that's so helpful. Great. Dave, does Premiere have a Discord? I don't know if we have a dedicated Discord. This is something which we might want to start, and this is why we started doing these classes as well, okay? Rosemary, thank you, Jason. Awesome. Very, very good. Okay. And Diego, yes, you answered the same thing. All right, everybody. So those are kind of the basics for getting started, right? Showed you how to set up the project, showed you how to import footage. You can double click in the project panel. You can use the media browser to navigate to your footage and drag things in. You can then use something like Freeform, which allows you to very freely and easily view your content, visually organize your content, set in and outs, and then drag things into the timeline. Also showed you how you can drag stuff directly over the program monitor and determine where it goes with your existing footage in a timeline. You also have the ability to create new sequences from the new item icon here. We talked about the various tools, including selection tool, ripple edit tool, razor tool and the slip tool, right? We didn't even get to type tool, but again, that's beyond the basics. We'll get that in another class when we talk about motion graphics templates. And then your basic slip and slide assembly inside your timeline, as well as adjusting playback and pause resolution to give you the best playback and scrub performance when you are working inside the program monitor. All right. So thank you so much for joining. Of course, the replay will be available on Behance and the Adobe Creative Cloud YouTube channel. I'll be back next Friday where we will do part 2 of this, and we'll get a little bit deeper. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the other tools, the text tool. Maybe we'll go into a bit of export as well, talk a little bit about some audio settings, and just give you a little bit more of the basics of cutting together that story with Premiere Pro. So thanks as always for watching. Coming up next, we've got our XD Daily Creative Challenge. So stick around for that with Howard, and we will see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.